Maloko a hlomphegilego yoale e tla ba sebaka sa go swara thapelo tsa setho goba sa monagano. Le ka dula fase. Honorable members, I have been informed that the Whippery have agreed that there will be no notices of motions or motions without notice. And I have received a request that the question addressed to the Minister of Finance be taken last and Labour be the second last. So we will now proceed with the questions as printed on the order paper. However, I don't see the Minister of Agriculture in the House currently, unless there's another minister who's been assigned to answer on her behalf. If none, I'm going to take the following minister because we've got a long order paper today. Does the House allow me? Yes. Thank you very much. So in the place of finance, we are going to take the questions of transport in the place of finance, because finance has now gone last. So transport will get in the space of finance. Have I made myself clear? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I will now call upon the Honorable Al-Jamp. Communication is not yet here because they were supposed to come after agriculture. Then I will go straight to the Minister of Economic Development. I will now call upon the Honorable Patel to deal with question 147 asked by Honorable B.A. Mnguni. Honorable B.A. Mnguni is not in the House. Can I check whether has he sent somebody to stand in for him according to the rules? Minister, you can respond to the question if you wish to, but the rules, if the member who asks the question is not in the House, you are not forced to answer the question. But for the sake of other members and the public, you can if you wish to.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. I do indeed wish to avail myself of the opportunity, and thank you for the question that was put to us. Since the adoption of the new growth path in October 2010, the Department has worked very closely with the private sector, within government itself, and with foreign investors. Since the adoption of that growth path, the economy has generated about 750,000 net new jobs. The provinces with the largest increases in jobs were Gauteng, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga, which together created about 450,000 jobs in the 2 years to the second quarter of 2013. The provinces with the lowest growth in jobs were the Western Cape, Northwest, and Free State, which together created 31,000 jobs over this period. If we look, honourable members, at the rate of growth, not just the absolute achievement of jobs, then the fastest percentage change was in Limpopo, the Northern Cape, and Mpumalanga. The growth in Limpopo and Mpumalanga in particular points to the success of government's infrastructure rollout plan. In particular, I draw attention to the fact that in Limpopo we have the Medupi power station with some 15,000 people employed, and in Mpumalanga, the Kusile power station under construction with also a substantial number of people employed. In the infrastructure program, which is one of the programs that government has initiated to address both economic growth as well as job creation, we have 18 strategic integrated projects, and there is a question later that deals with this, to which I will therefore respond in a bit more detail. The second part of the strategy has been the expansion of industrialization efforts, partly connected to the infrastructure build program, but also expanding investment in the real economy across a number of different sectors. Turning next to the growth. Growth has averaged around 3% a year over the last few years, with a dip more recently, particularly as a result of global economic uncertainties. Commodity prices had recovered initially from the 2008 downturn, but they began to fall again from 2011. And because we're such a significant exporter of minerals, they impact very clearly, very directly, and very materially on our growth rate. The BOLD program, that's the infrastructure program, has seen public investment climb from a post-recession low of about 6.8% of GDP to the current rate of over 7.5% of GDP. Connecting infrastructure and industrialization is government's localization program, which seeks to provide opportunities for local manufacturers off the back of the infrastructure program. We also have in place a strategy to improve skills development in the economy, and in particular to shift skills to more technical areas, so a lot more investment in engineering at university level and the expansion of FET colleges. On the counter-cyclical element of the question, the core of any counter-cyclical strategy is that the budget would not contract during economic downturns, and it should grow more slowly to upturns. The Minister of Finance yesterday in the medium-term budget policy statement indicated the direction of public policy in this regard. Those then constitute, Honourable Chairperson, the reply to the question that was put.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Mnguni, any follow-up? Fine. Any other follow-up? Can I request people who make follow-ups today, don't give a thesis of motivation. Go straight to your question, follow-up question. And the follow-up question must arise from the question asked on the question paper. Tate Mokgoro?
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Minister, whether there's any indication that shows how many jobs has been created in the Northern Cape in particular. Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Indeed, thank you very much for the question. Indeed, there is an indication of the job numbers in the Northern Cape. I don't have that information immediately available, but I hope during the course of the session, before I get to my last question, that I will have that information, and I will weave it into one of the other replies.
Thank you. Honourable Worth.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. I would like to just ask the Minister with regard to the automotive motor industry, has this had any visible effect on the economic patterns as recently with all the labour unrest? Thank you very much.
Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much for that follow-up question. Indeed, there's a question on the order paper directed to the Minister of Trade and Industry that goes to this issue. I have been asked by the Minister of Trade and Industry to represent him here today. And in fact, Honourable Chairperson, there is a request that the trade and industry questions follow immediately on the economic development questions. If it's your decision that we follow that, I may be able to reply in a bit more detail at that point.
You will take them all at the same time. Then your follow-up question can stand up to then, Mr. Worth. We now move to question 151, Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. The question relates to the increased levels of industrial funding by the IDC in the past 2 years. I'm pleased to note that in this period, 2011-12 and 12-13, saw the value of IDC's funding approvals increasing to 26.6 billion rand, compared to 18.1 billion rand in the preceding 2-year period. This is an increase of some 46%. As a result of this increase, the IDC was able to increase the levels of funding into the economy, and 24 billion rand was disbursed to businesses over the past 2 years. We measure both approval rates as well as disbursement. Funding approved over the last 2 years is expected to create and save some 68,000 direct jobs compared to 56,000 jobs in the previous 2 years. And I think this points to the important role of the Industrial Development Corporation in lifting the rate of fixed direct investment and supporting jobs in the economy. Now, of course, although the level of funding is an important indicator and the number of jobs are also important, they don't represent the entire story of the IDC. Let me briefly turn to the price of steel. It's an impediment to the development of the downstream fabricated metals industry. The IDC, off the back of its investment, is now also looking at strategies in the supply of iron, in supporting small steel producers, and investigating the viability of large projects. Honourable members may have seen the public announcement last year of the IDC acquiring the major stake in Score Metals, one of the iconic South African companies. Another example of the IDC's investment footprint is that directed at the green economy. South Africa is a very carbon-intensive economy. It means we emit a very high CO2 for each 1% of GDP. Our job is to reduce that impact. In part, we do so by promoting the green economy. Over the next few days, I will be visiting a site in Uppington in the Northern Cape, where the IDC is a co-investor in a very large solar plant that will be producing green energy on scale that will go into the national grid. So these examples point to the qualitative impact of the IDC. The final example I'd like to cite is that of agro-processing. It plays a major role in the development of the economy, but it's also important for food security. 2 of the projects approved in recent years were implemented during 2013, and they illustrate this point. One of these, located in Reitz in the Free State, is the 5th largest chicken abattoir in the country, with a capacity to slaughter 160,000 chickens per day, and indirectly result in the beneficiation of 80,000 tons of maize per year. So by the IDC coming in at the top end of the supply chain close to the consumer, it also pulls in agricultural inputs, in this case, clearly maize. But whilst that is important to us, part of the IDC's mandate is to support the growth of a group of small-scale farmers, so they look also at how to ensure not only that we get the maize inputs and the abattoir capacity, but that we create opportunities for smaller farmers. A new dairy in the Eastern Cape produces long-life milk and other dairy products from milk sourced in the region. It's estimated that the dairy will increase the demand of milk from farmers, primary producers in the province, by 18%. So just one dairy that the IDC co-invests in will lift the production of milk by close to 20%. These are examples, I think, of the impact of the IDC. We've also done some work on small business development, and over the last few years, we've been looking at how to improve the delivery capacity of our small business agencies. Last year, we launched the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, and I'm pleased to say that in the first year of its existence, it more than doubled the approval rate of loans to small businesses compared to its 2 predecessors together. So these are indications of the direction we need to go to. When I reflect on it, the level of funding for small business is not yet close to what is needed. But we're creating the capacity to scale that up dramatically. And early indications are that this year we will do significantly better than last year. And last year, as I indicated, was double the throughput rate of the year before that. So we're seeing now the small business lending pipeline is beginning to open, and it will have a positive effect on the economy. I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Honorable Mabi, any follow-up?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for the positive response. And we also appreciate the role that the IDC is contributing towards the building of the economy, particularly in terms of towards the job creation. A number of things comes into my mind: the issue of training and capacity building and sustainability of the projects that you are funding. I would also want to know the types of funding that you give to these small businesses. Is it in a form of a loan or is it a grant? And if it's in a form of a loan, how do you recoup the money? Thanks, Chair.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start with the question of training and capacity building of smaller businesses. We have two agencies. The one is the Small Enterprise Development Agency, otherwise known as CEDA. Its job is to provide technical support to small businesses. Then we have a funding agency who use the submitted business plan of an applicant and evaluates it. Now, in the past, these were very disconnected. We're now ensuring that there's greater coordination between these two agencies. So when a small business wants to apply for funding, immediately you have the technical support to get a proper business plan in place. The second part of the question is sustainability. And again, I'm going to confine myself to the small business side, where I think the question was principally directed. We look at the business plan of an entity because most of what CFA disburses is in the form of loans. There's a small allocation of grants on capacity building, but the primary role of CFA is to provide funding through loans to small businesses who cannot access loans from the commercial banks. If a project is capable of generating support from your standard banks, your ABSAs and so on, then small businesses normally go there. But when the risk profile is too high, or the cost of the borrowing is too high for the small business, CFA becomes the institution of choice that small businesses rely on. Can we do more on building sustainability of small businesses? I think we can. But it is a global trend that you have a relatively high failure rate among small businesses. And so we're doing two things. We're helping to strengthen small businesses to bring that failure rate down. But the other part is to recognize many small businesses are new entrants. People who come with a great idea, with passion, they get into the economy, they learn something. So you will always find that a small business funding agency that relies on public funding will have a higher rate of poor performing loans than the commercial banks because our risk appetite is a bit higher. So I think it's both of those that we need to do. Building capacity, but also having a greater risk appetite. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other follow-up question? Mr. Worth, then Mr. Monsitsi, thereafter, then Mr. Tau, then close follow-up questions.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'd like to ask the Minister with regard to funding by the IDC or the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, whether there's been any thought or looking at any biofuel industry, whether it be from maize or sugar. Thank you, Chair.
Minister?
Thank you very much for the question, Honourable Chairperson. One of the IDC's big projects at the moment is a biofuel project in Craddock, in the Eastern Cape. It's intended to have two components. The one component is support for the building of the plant itself that will do the refining, but the other part is to stimulate smallholder farmers who will provide the feedstock for that plant. It's the first of a number of projects like that. The Department of Energy has done an excellent job in creating the policy framework that will require a portion of South African fuel in future to be generated from renewable sources. At the moment, we're looking at a range of feedstocks. There's discussions with farmers in KwaZulu-Natal about sugarcane, but we've already agreed sugar beet as a feedstock, and there are a few other products that are also in the pipeline. I think this does represent one of the challenges that we faced is the green economy is a necessary and important area to invest. But with solar power generation and wind farms, we don't create enormous numbers of jobs. The capital to labor ratio favors a relatively high capital investment. Biofuels, though, is different because it grows the feedstock on the farms that is used in the process. So we think the jobs dividend will be very significant in this regard. And the IDC has positioned itself to be a leading lender to the development of the biofuels industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Monsese.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, Chairperson, understanding the first world to be the Europeans and the West. Also submitting that the early centuries, the market economy, mostly on the West, it thrived very highly on the back of emissions. And that the current measures to request, most in particular, the African countries to limit the current use of gas and oil in order to avoid emissions. Does this not border on ensuring that African countries do not develop to the same extent as the West has done in the early centuries? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much to the Honourable Member for the question. And I think that question goes to the heart of a dilemma that developing countries faced during the Copenhagen talks on climate change. We recognized, and President Zuma put forward the argument that the development requirements of the South, particularly of the African continent, is so significant that we need to ensure that the climate change regime does not constrain us in any significant way. But at the same time, we've also recognized that climate change, if it continues unabated, will have a very dramatic and costly impact on Africa. It will disturb climate systems, it will change weather patterns, and it will have a potentially devastating effect on African agriculture. So we have a responsibility towards our own continent and towards our own future to ensure that we have a less carbon-intensive economy. So how do we square these two considerations? On the one hand, development needs, and there are costs to being greener. On the other hand, the reality that if we do nothing, Africa will pay a very heavy price. The way we've done that is in all the climate change treaties and in the negotiations, including COP17 that we hosted in eThekwini, we've made it clear that we need a policy framework that recognizes the problems of developing countries. In short, it has two key components. The first component is we can commit to climate change goals, provided developed countries make technical and financial assistance available. So that as we carry the cost of these adjustments to our technologies, it don't all come from the envelope of our own limited resources. Northern countries have a responsibility because they benefited from very carbon-intensive growth in the past to put some of that resources into the South. And secondly, we recognize that those who are the big developed countries that are large emitters have a bigger contribution to make to reducing emissions than the smaller southern countries. And so the program to achieve our goals have been carefully calibrated not to have a damaging effect on African economies. In this regard, for example, we use a concept called business as usual. So we forecast that if we make no change, what will be our carbon emission in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 15 years' time? Then we scale that down. It doesn't mean that the actual number of the level of emissions will decline. It's just the growth rate will be moderated. So we've gone into the detail to ensure that we structure our treaty commitments in a manner that is compatible with our development goals. And that is South Africa's position. It's a position that is one support strongly from Brazil, from China, from India. So there's a block of southern countries that pursue that agenda in climate change talks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tao, you are the last one on this question.
No, thank you very much, Chair. A very specific one, Honorable Minister, in appreciating your responses. With regard to the funding, it would have been better if it came even earlier to say, part of how then do you assist or how do you recoup the loans, especially after the new entrants and emerging and then fail? After failure or collapse of those small and emerging enterprises, what then do you do to recoup? Do we take the commercial route, the credit bureau, and all those sorts of things? Thanks.
Minister?
Thank you very much for the question, Honourable Chairperson. I think each of the applications that an enterprise make for loans, whether small or large, is accompanied by a set of joint commitments. So in this case, let's say it's a small company, CIFA would make commitments to a sum of money that will be made available on preset dates. In some of these cases, companies would seed, they would provide collateral, they would seed a portion of their income by way of repayment. The truth, though, is in a number of cases, recovery is not possible. So if you look at the CIFA financial statements, you'll see an impairment rate. An impairment rate is that portion of loans that is irrecoverable. A company in good faith, an entrepreneur went in, they either ran their business well and there was something that would have happened out of the ordinary, or they had a lot of enthusiasm but not enough business skills, and so they ran a commercially poor operation. Whatever the reason is, they lose everything. CIFA often finds that it can't then recover anything. There is one more CIFA program that's interesting that I wanted to share with honourable members. CIFA provides a guarantee to the big commercial banks. When the commercial banks provide loans to small businesses, approved loans to small businesses, and those businesses collapse, then a portion of the risk is carried by CIFA. The banks pay CIFA a premium, a sum of money for that, but we want to increase the risk appetite in the society, because that's what entrepreneurship is about. It's not a guarantee that you're going to make money. It's not a guarantee that you're going to succeed, but it is an opportunity for a viable enterprise to arise. If we close the doors and we only take on support for companies that have an absolutely perfect business plan that's guaranteed to win, we will leave many potential entrepreneurs out of the economy. So we try to find that balance. Even the IDC, which tend to make bigger loans, honourable members may have seen that there's been a bit of a rise in the impairment ratio. And that means that they're demonstrating a greater preparedness to take risk. It's still, the IDC's total asset base, I'm happy to say, is still growing and growing quite robustly. So there's no chance of the viability of the IDC being affected. But it does say it is prepared to take more risk. CIFA does the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I put now question 188 to the Minister of Economic Development by Mr. Chane. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. The question 188 relates to the National Infrastructure Plan. The department, through the work it does with the PICC, that's the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission, currently monitors more than 150 active project clusters on a quarterly basis. So every quarter, we provide a detailed account of every project in those project clusters. We monitor spending levels, construction progress, construction jobs, localization, and so on. Part of our work is to collect data from the site project managers and the departments at national and provincial level. Part of our monitoring work is to send teams of officials to undertake site visits and compile reports that go to the PICC and to Cabinet. And part of our work involves the President or line ministers visiting infrastructure projects to ensure that, in fact, we are achieving the progress that we aimed at. The question talks about what challenges are we finding. The challenges vary by project, but they often include regulatory delays where you need permission for something from a public authority, and there are some delays in it. Court challenges, where someone who was the unsuccessful bidder in a tender takes the successful bid to court. Contractors who underperform, sometimes small ones who go into liquidation, but in other cases like Medupi, very large multinational corporations who underperform. Poor planning, in many cases we find that there's good levels of planning, but we've come across infrastructure projects where the level of planning was not adequate. And finally, weak integration of different elements of a plan. You'll find a school being built, excellent school, but the supply of water to the school is delayed. So you have a project that is complete only in part. Our work in the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission, and I have the chairperson of the Management Committee, Minister Gugile Nkwinti, sitting here today, as well as the member of the Management Committee, the Honourable Ben Martins, the Minister of Energy. Their work, our work, is to unblock this. We have recently looked at not just a project-by-project unblocking, but a legal framework. And we crafted it in the form of an infrastructure development bill that will now be submitted to Parliament, and it will help to speed up processes. I look forward to receiving the report of this, the support of this august House, to process the bill as expeditiously as possible so that the new administration can build on the successes of the past 4 years. So infrastructure is a great success story. Yes, it has challenges, but we're also rolling out on a very wide scale. The infrastructure development bill can help us very, very greatly. So, honourable members, I think I would conclude by illustrating the scope of our oversight visit. And just say over the past few weeks, each of the ministers that you see here today would have visited infrastructure sites. I had, for example, visited 8 infrastructure projects in 4 provinces. In KZN, the Konubia integrated human settlements, 450 houses have been completed. It's a massive project with many more houses being built now. The King Dinizulu Hospital in Durban, that's revamped completely. It's a very modern hospital now. The Transnet multi-product fuel pipeline, it pumps diesel and petrol from eThekwini to the economic heartland in Gauteng, as well as the Pier 2 Durban Harbour expansion, where we've invested in massive new capacity to move cargo rapidly between ship and port. We're confident about the economy, so we want to invest in the infrastructure that can support it. I visited the Eastern Cape recently to a small village near to Mthatha to open the Vulindlela Junior Primary School. And with the Premier of Gauteng, we looked at the Rea Vaya integrated public transport system in Gauteng, which we also launched Phase 1B, and I'd like to say that part of that was a visit to a bus company that is now locally producing the buses for the Ria Vaya program. And of course, with the President and colleagues, we visited the Grootvryheid power station in Mpumalanga. Just to illustrate this, there's sometimes the question asked, has government successfully been able to develop additional energy generating capacity during the last 4 years? And people would say, look, we know you're doing great work on Medupi and Kusile, but that is for the next administration to complete. What have you done? So what I did was, together with my colleagues, we aggregated all the smaller power stations that we've brought back into service, revamped them, spent billions upgrading them. If you look at the output of those power stations, they're roughly equivalent to having built a new Koeberg nuclear power station. Just what we've done in the last 4 years. Energy that's now going into the grid. So this is a success story, Honourable Chairperson and members, that we can justly celebrate as South Africans across the political party lines. Thank you.
Thank you. I now put question 194 by Honourable F. Adams to the Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. The question recognizing that South Africa. So when we see the questions that are often raised in the media, there are also countries with better than South Africa. So the fact that they're growing fast, and provided that that is good for the continent, creates markets for South African goods, it helped to create more stability as the Ford Motor Company. Ford decided to locate the manufacture of its Ranger bakkie in South Africa. It exports to 102 countries using Pretoria as its base. But what is really interesting is the African story. It takes off and does well. It benefits jobs in South Africa. The average of middle-income countries, if you exclude China. China's growth has been extraordinarily high. If you take China out of the basket, we track the average. So part of government's economy, one of the biggest problems is we're not sure we can do it. So you've got to invest in energy. Company wants to expand its infrastructure in place. So that's what in expanding education and skills development Africa is an opportunity for us in public infrastructure and in our education system. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Mr.
A recent report by the IMF economic situation and that internal factors like the strike.
Question. I think our key trading partner, the European Union, has been in recession and not growing. The second part is domestic factors. Last year, the Labour and what is it that's at the heart of the social accords? The prosperity that we're seeking to build. Issues of level of investment that is a driver of growth and jobs, but is also the success of everybody being in the same boat. There is often a perception on the shop floor that there are two realities. A reality point to some of the steps that government has taken there. So I think that it's fair to say that there are both global factors as well as domestic factors.
Does the department at all invest or assist firms, for argument's sake, they want to expand Maputo Harbour? Indirectly, it might assist South Africa. Obviously, it might take business away from us. There, and let's say, for argument's sake, in Namibia, what is the department's vision on that? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you very much for the follow-up question. One of the agencies that report to the department is the Industrial Development Corporation. I've given the IDC a specific mandate to help with the industrialization of the African continent, on the basis that Africa's growth is not at the expense of South Africa, for the reasons I've alluded to earlier. So the IDC today is active in a number of African countries, investing in Namibia, investing in West Africa, investing in Mozambique. One of the biggest projects historically in the IDC has been the Mozal project that is a partnership with Mozambique and is a big generator of income for Mozambique. The IDC is a key partner in that. So I am delighted to say that we're seeing an increase in the footprint of the IDC. Not very long ago, the IDC co-invested in a major cement manufacturing operation in Ethiopia. It is active in a number of other African countries, in Tanzania, in the hospitality industry. So it's really going out there, helping us to achieve the high growth rates in other African countries that we see. In constructing many of its agreements, it builds a supplier pipeline back to the South African economy. I'd like then finally to return to the issue of Maputo Harbour. In our own long-term thinking in the PICC, we see the development, obviously, of eThekwini and Richards Bay is important, but we see integrating Maputo Harbour in our own thinking for the movement of goods, and particularly commodities like coal and so on, from Limpopo via Maputo to markets elsewhere in the world. So in general, we remain very positive about those kind of projects. Ultimately, even though there may be different political boundaries, we are slowly forging a common economy in Southern Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I now put question 196, asked by Honorable Adams. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. South Africa convened the BRICS summit at the end of March this year. It was the first time that the summit was held on the African continent. It brought together the heads of state of arguably some of the most significant societies and economies globally. But we did something unusual. For the first time since the formation of BRICS, a host country, in this case South Africa, asked that there be a further event, a side event. And we asked that because we wanted to connect what BRICS could do with not just South Africa, but with the African continent. And President Zuma then extended an invitation to a number of African countries, and we were pleased that some 15 African heads of state or government came to eThekwini. They included the head of state of Ethiopia, Senegal, Chad, the Ivory Coast, Mozambique, Uganda, Libya, Algeria, Egypt, Rwanda, Congo, Brazzaville, Angola, Benin, Equatorial Guinea, and Guinea-Conakry. So out of these, we sat down and we said, how can BRICS support African industrialization? Now that summit was held a little bit more than 6 months ago. So they won't immediately impact on the trade figures. It takes a while now for the investment to kick in and the greater trade to be developed. But we have no doubt that if you look at the last few years, an ever-increasing part of our trade is with the rest of the continent. We started off on a very low base. Perhaps I should share with honorable members an interesting statistic. If you look at the level of intra-regional trade, countries trading with their immediate neighbors, for the European Union, it's about something like 70%. For Asia, if you take Japan as a developed economy out of Asia, it's about 45%. If you take the African continent, it's 12%. And the reason for that is we haven't developed the diversified economies that allow us to trade with each other. So that's what this head of state and government meeting was about, how to deepen industrialization on the continent. And that goes back to my earlier question. When we see high growth in the rest of the continent, we're delighted, we're happy, because it's part of creating a vibrant opportunity for South African goods to be sold and for places where South Africa can buy from. So because trade is a two-way street, and it helps to support the growth of African economies. At the meeting itself, we looked at infrastructure development. What can we do on road transport and rail? Part of it is the north-south corridor to link the city of Cape Town by road with the city of Cairo. It was a dream that an imperialist Cecil John Rhodes had more than a century ago. It's the responsibility of the democracy to give effect to that, to hook up through road and rail transport the various economies. President Zuma also, separate to the BRICS summit, launched trade talks with 25 other African countries to create a free trade area that, if it's successful, will be 600 million Africans in one market. It means when a company wants to expand, they have this enormous market that they can produce for. So these all indicate how central Africa is to our own future and to the economic strategy of this government. I thank you.
Mr. Adams, you're fine. Any other follow-up? Mr. Worth? That's the only hand I'm going to take.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the Minister, they say that the River Congo, the Congo River, could supply vast amounts of power. I think it's called the Inga scheme. There's talk, and has been alluded to that they've started on that. Can the Minister elaborate anything with regard to that project? Thanks.
Minister, you want to take that? I don't know how has it got to do with your department, but if you wish to, it's fine.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. The expert on the issue is sitting right in front of me, and that's the Minister of Energy, and perhaps the question can be directed to the Minister of Energy. But let me just make one point, and the Minister of Energy is absolutely on top of the detail of this. The river that we're talking about is called the Inga River. Its geological features are such that it provides an opportunity for an unusually high level of hydro energy that can be generated. South Africa is partnering with the Democratic Republic of Congo, led by the Minister of Energy on behalf of a team of cabinet people. So I think perhaps when the Minister of Energy has the floor, if the chairperson allows him, he could supplement these comments. Thank you.
No, I think Mr. Worth understands what I'm saying. I've heard it from the beginning that it doesn't belong there. So he knows who to ask that question. I now move to question 199, asked by Honorable Nyambi. Mr. Chana will stand in for Mr. Nyambi. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I should just make a point that we have not been able to obtain the details from the Honorable Nyambi. The question relates to a certain company. We looked at the details. The report is not available, but I would be happy to reply to the second part of the question, which refers to the President's view in the State of the Nation address, that the economy needs to grow threefold. Now, what is it that's the platform for our higher growth strategy? The first leg of it is infrastructure, because infrastructure is at the heart of growing just about every other sector of the economy. And I've spoken extensively earlier about infrastructure. The second leg is to use our mineral resource base. But as we emphasized, it's not the export of raw minerals that is going to lift this economy. It is beneficiating more of those minerals. And so the Department of Mineral Resources is doing a lot of work with the other economic departments in how to strengthen beneficiation. Next month, President Zuma will be visiting the Northern Cape. And at that visit, he will go to a small town with the unusual name of Hot as Hell. That is the name of the town. And in that town is located the world's largest manganese sinter plant, a co-investment by the IDC, a plant, this world's largest manganese sinter plant where the majority shareholder is a BEE company, where the owner of the BEE company, a female, a black female, is the active executive chairperson of the company. So we have in one example beneficiation, tapping our mineral resources, and real BEE, not someone who sits silently and waits for the dividends, but someone who's making things happen there. The third leg is agriculture and agro-processing, key part of lifting the rate of growth. I'm really pleased to note, for those who are fans and students of the quarterly labor force survey produced by Stats SA, you would have seen a significant growth in agricultural jobs in the last 12 months. The other legs are well known. They're the jobs drivers of the new growth path. They go to the areas of manufacturing, the knowledge economy, the green economy, and of course the opportunities on the African continent. So those represent the platforms that we use. Complementing that is the investment in skills development, particularly making sure that FET colleges work. We've launched the construction of 2 new universities, and we will be building 12 campuses, new campuses for FET colleges in the next period as part of investing in our people. That is what our plan is, to lift the rate of growth and to make that growth more inclusive. The benefits of that growth must reach the poor. It must be a jobs-rich growth. I thank you.
Mr. Chane, fine. Any other follow-up question? None. I will allow the minister to take the trade and industry questions, then we'll go to communication. Honorable Minister, I now go to put question 145. No. It's trade and industry 179.
I thank you very much.
I'm sorry. 145, I'm correct. Yes, it starts there. Question 145.
Thank you very much. I don't know, Honourable Chairperson, whether there is a bonus scheme for the number of questions that are answered in one sitting, but here goes. The question relates to the incubation support program of the Department of Trade and Industry, and it asks the question whether the program is still on track. Yes, indeed. The incubation program is still on track and has already yielded successes. Honourable members may recall my earlier reply on CIFA and small business support. Now, just making funding available is not enough. An incubation program is literally a holding of hands of small businesses by larger companies, where we ensure that those small businesses are supported as they deal with the problems of starting up an operation or expanding an operation. As at September this year, 30 applications had been approved to the value of about 410 million rand, and the total value of investment that was leveraged through the incubation program is about 817 million rand. A very large number of jobs has been created as a result of this. We have a breakdown of approvals. In the Eastern Cape, there were 4. In ICT, Films and Agriculture, in Free State 3, Gauteng 7, KZN 1 in the clothing sector, Limpopo 3, all in manufacturing, Mpumalanga 4, Northern Cape 1, Northwest 0, and Western Cape 7. On the 10th of October this year, the Minister of Trade and Industry launched the Sasol Chem City Business Incubator in Sasolburg. Chem City is a multi-sectoral facility which seeks to expand, and it's the first project to be approved under the new ISP program to the value of 26 million rand over 3 years. Here we're building a partnership with Sasol to ensure that it brings more companies into its supply chain. It's leveraging off the supply chains of large companies. That's one of the other elements of our small business program. Other companies like Eskom and Transnet have agreed in principle to partner with the DTI to sponsor a number of incubators. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Chane. Honorable Mngoni, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the answer, Minister. I just want to find out whether has there been any failure rate in this incubation program.
Minister?
Thank you very much for the follow-up question. The incubation program is a new program. It was launched in September 2012. So we don't yet have information available on whether there were companies that folded after being included in the program. But for me, I have no doubt that over time we will find that the success rate in the incubation program is likely to be higher than the average success rate, precisely because the incubation program supports small businesses so actively. But that is not to say that there will be no failures. It's the nature of a market economy that some companies succeed and other companies fail. It's our ability to learn from the reason why companies fail and see whether in the design of incubation we can reduce that risk. Never eliminate it, just reduce that risk. And that's, I think, what the incubation program is about. Thank you.
No, any other follow-up? I move to question by Mr. Kamete to the Minister of Trade and Industry. Honorable Minister, question 148.
Thank you very much for the question. And this question goes to the issues raised in the auto sector. And I'm pleased to indicate that over the last few weeks, we've had meetings between the Minister of Trade and Industry and players in the auto sector to look at the impact of industrial action and what we can do. So we've really been building confidence in South Africa as a location for automotive manufacturing, in spite of the fact that there's been a strike in the sector. On the 17th of October, Minister Davies held a joint meeting with the National Association of Automotive Manufacturers of South Africa, with the CEOs of the major manufacturers, and with NUMSA, the trade union. And they all reaffirmed their commitment to work together to improve competitiveness in the industry and to enhance South Africa's attractiveness as an automotive manufacturing destination. So the strike has ended. There are some lessons that are coming out of the strike. But 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity in Germiston to visit the Marco Polo factory. The Marco Polo factory assembles buses. And at the launch of this program, the CEO of Mercedes-Benz was present. And he gave a brief speech in which he says, "We're thankful and we're happy that the strike has ended." And I'd just like to tell the audience here today that the strike ended on a particular afternoon. I think he said the Thursday afternoon, but whatever the afternoon was. That late afternoon, we sent an SMS to every employee of Mercedes-Benz, asking them to return to work the next day. We expected that some would come and that it would take a couple days to get back to full production. To our surprise, the next day, 99% of the workforce arrived at work. We reached agreement with the trade union to introduce 12-hour shifts to catch up on the lost production, and we're confident we're going to be able to do that. Last week, there was an article in one of the newspapers which talked about the Ford Motor Company. The global president and CEO of Ford Motor, Alan Mulally, visited South Africa, and he was asked at the motor show what are the prospects for the industry in the light of what had happened. And I quote from Business Day, Mr. Mulally was anxious to ease fears over Ford's plans. He said the group was happy with its global manufacturing operations, which were pretty much where we want them to be. Silverton, that's where the plant is located, is designed to build up to 10,000 Rangers annually. And the current model is due to continue until at least 2018. Mr. Mulally said production would continue as planned, and the group did not intend to build assembly facilities anywhere else in Africa. He said reliability of delivery was critical for any plant, and we're continuously re-evaluating our plant footprint across the world. And then he said, and this is quite significant, that the company is looking at expanding its operations as part of growing the market elsewhere in the continent. And he looked to South Africa as the place where they're going to put that additional investment. So you see here from both Mercedes-Benz and Ford and other companies a recognition that, of course, they don't welcome strikes. They want labor peace. They want cooperation. But when it happens, they sit it through. As soon as it's resolved, they get back with their employees. They work out a plan to catch up the lost production, and they get on with the work. In the auto sector, we've got multi-year agreements. So generally speaking, when you conclude an agreement, you have a couple years of labor peace. And when the contract comes to an end, that's when the bargaining starts again. So I recognize that there's been some anxiety about the strike, but I think the indications are that we will recover, that we will be able to grow, that we remain an excellent choice for investors from across the world, and in fact, for domestic investors. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Gamete. Honorable Gamete is not in the house. Any other follow-up question, Mr. Mbuni? Or you're standing in for him? Okay.
Yes, Chair. Chairperson, we are told that the South African motor automotive industry, due to inefficiencies, due to labor costs, it's somehow uncompetitive. Now, how much money is government going to put in so to make sure that the automotive industry in South Africa still remains competitive?
Minister.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to start first with saying that we have a very significant support program for the auto sector. It is done through a system where we encourage companies to make fewer models, but to expand the production for each model so that the unit cost come down and they become price competitive. And through the program that government has in place, we've been able to see a vast expansion of local production. Because the question relates to BMW, I visited the BMW plant last year to launch the manufacture of the new 3 Series. And at the time, BMW had one of the global executives present from Germany. And we talked about the efficiency in the plant. And he said to me, from a quality point of view, the 3 Series manufactured in South Africa is pound for pound absolutely as good as the best made in Germany. And Germany is the gold standard for the production of luxury vehicles. So we've seen here clearly an indication from companies that we've got the quality right. The price of vehicles are driven very much by technology, training, and how many units you manufacture. The bigger your production run, the lower your unit cost, and the more efficient you become. As we expand the African market, remember the importance that President Zuma attaches to the free trade talks for the African continent, the more we can create a market of real size. Honorable members, just consider in BRICS, we are the smallest nation by population, 52 million people. The next biggest country, Russia, has got about 3 times that population. Brazil has got 4 times the number of people in South Africa. And China and India, of course, are enormously large populations. So the auto sector's efficiency is certainly going to be a function in part of market size. The other elements of training, we've worked with the auto sector. When Ford had a slowdown in its production, the IDC partnered with Ford. When BMW had difficulties with their global sales, we allowed them to use the training layoff scheme introduced by government in 2009 to tide them over. So we see a lot of partnership between government and the auto sector to try to keep the sector as an efficient sector. Currently, in 2012, we were producing some 539,000 vehicles domestically, and we were exporting 277,000 of those vehicles. You don't sell 1 out of 5 of your Ford Ranger bakkies elsewhere in the continent if you don't get your quality right and if you don't get your price right, because that's what people are looking at. So yes, there are challenges that we must continuously improve the quality and the efficiency of producing vehicles, but we also have a great success story to tell. And I think part of our job as government is to bring these realities into the public discussion and to share them with a very important constituency. Those are the members of parliament. I thank you.
No, any other follow-up question? I then move to 174 by Honorable Boroto. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. The question is directed to the DTI, and it relates to two FET colleges in the Eastern Cape and Ekurhuleni. The DTI has signed an MOU with the Ekurhuleni Further Education and Training College on the 4th of April last year as a hosting institution to pilot a Center for Entrepreneurship program. An agreement was also signed with the King Insa FET College on the 3rd of October this year. The launch of these institutions was a significant milestone. Centers of entrepreneurship at Ekurhuleni FET College and at the King Insa FET College were launched by the Deputy Minister, the Honorable Elizabeth Tabete, and the first phase of the establishment entailed getting proper governance structures, selection criteria to determine eligible participants, capacity building with the colleges, and monitoring and evaluation instruments. So that as we put resources and effort into the FET colleges, we make sure that we help to improve their long-term capacity. The DTI has also commissioned research to determine the level of readiness of institutions to host these centers of entrepreneurship, and they undertook feasibility workshops as a preliminary step for the study. During the current financial year, feasibility assessments were conducted at 42 FET colleges in all 9 provinces and at 3 universities of technology in Western Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Gauteng. In respect of the other part of the question, we note that the feasibility assessment process has not been concluded, but preliminary results are available, and they indicate that a potential number of institutions are showing critical elements regarded as necessary ingredients for hosting the program successfully. The department envisaged that 2 more institutions will participate in the next financial year, and the department will continue to identify institutions for participation. The study that I have cited earlier also revealed that capacity of lecturers is a key constraining factor that can hamper progress and affect the delivery commitments. In addressing this problem, the University of Johannesburg has been appointed to assist with designing a capacity building strategy and program to enable participating institutions to manage the program successfully. The DTI is also collaborating with the Department of Higher Education and Training in reviewing the entrepreneurship curriculum content and to strengthening the capacity of lecturers in this regard. I thank you.
Honorable Boroto, satisfied? No. Any other follow-up? I move to question 179, asked by Honorable Makunyane to the Minister. Honorable Minister.
The question asks that with regard to the commitment in 2009 by the Department of Trade and Industry to work closely with the Economic Development Department to address the challenges of disparities in the spatial economy and promote rural development. And so the question is, what has the DTI done? In responding to the question on behalf of my colleague, we make the point that spatial disparities, particularly the over-concentration of our industrial economy in a few regions, remain a concern of government. One of our industrial policy objectives is to ensure balanced development, that we don't have only 2 or 3 major centers of growth, with every other province being labor supplying areas, providing people, but with no economic opportunity. So some of the particular projects include the Regional Industrial Development Strategy that guides our interventions in creating additional industrial hubs and ensure that industrial development programs don't lead to further marginalization of underdeveloped areas. There are strategic integrated projects that the Economic Development Department is actively involved in as part of the PICC. And so what we've done with these strategic integrated projects working with the DTI is unlock opportunities elsewhere. So Northern Cape, as an example, has had slower jobs growth in the past. The example now that I gave earlier of the manganese sinter plant is an opportunity to grow the Northern Cape economy. Similarly, in SIP 1, we're working very hard to unlock the enormous coal, chromium, platinum, and palladium reserves of Limpopo.
Okay.
So that's another area that the DTI is an important partner. Third, special economic zones. In this area of work, the DTI has completed work on a policy framework and also the Special Economic Zones Bill, which is now before Parliament. A total of 10 proposed SEZs have been identified, and those that pass the economic viability tests will be developed into key industrial hubs. And the idea is to make sure that these zones help to address spatial imbalances. The DTI is also working in partnership with national and provincial departments on small-scale regional clusters. They are implementing 33 projects in 25 districts across the country. The department recognizes that this is not yet done on scale. We need to be expanding it a lot more. But this is the beginning of the process that will ensure much greater equitable development. Finally, the DTI is also working with the Economic Development Department in the provinces on finalizing a small and medium enterprise action plan. The MINMAC met recently and agreed to a number of steps that the different national and provincial departments will take to expand lending and technical support to small businesses. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Is there any follow-up question? In the absence of any follow-up questions, then we shall proceed to the questions relevant to communications. Honourable Minister.
I'm responding, of course, to question 140.
Just hold it, Honourable Minister. Sorry. Let him.
Is it 136? Oh, I thought he said.
Okay. Just. Okay. No, thank you very much. My apologies, Honourable Minister. I'm informed that the questions for trade and industry, the Minister will continue with them. So you may continue.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair. There are another 43 questions on behalf of the DTI that I intend to address. I should ask that be struck from the record. The next question, question 190, relates to progress that has been made in establishing a cooperative academy in collaboration with the Department of Higher Education and Training. Now, first, the DTI initially mooted the proposal for a cooperative academy. The reason was very clear. As we expand cooperatives, we need to ensure that we strengthen the business skills of people in the cooperative movement. The mandate for the establishment of a cooperative academy has now been transferred from the DTI to the Department of Higher Education and Training. The process of establishing this institution has started. The Minister of Higher Education and Training has established a ministerial task team in September this year to seek advice on all aspects pertaining to the establishment of the Academy. The task team is composed of stakeholders within the cooperative movement, academics, and civil society. The DTI also serves on the task team, and it is hoped that the task team will complete its work within the next 6 months. The DTI will continue to work very closely with DHET to ensure that the Academy is established. The second part of the question, the DTI has indicated that education and training is one of the 7 core international cooperative alliance principles of cooperatives. Continuous education is important to the long-term success of co-ops, as well as to creating the possibility of new enterprises. The Academy will therefore equip co-ops with much-needed technical and managerial skills and knowledge that will aid them in running their operations successfully. The final part of the question, I advise honourable members that the ministerial task team will determine the actual cost of setting up and running a National Cooperative Academy, and we're looking at different costing models that the DTI and higher education and training should consider. The ministerial task team will also make recommendations regarding the accreditation of materials and courses that will be used by the Academy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Is there anybody standing in for Honourable Makate? Yes. Okay. Do you have a follow-up question in any case? Okay. No, thank you very much. Is there any follow-up question? In the absence of any, then we'll proceed to question number 208. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and I am pleased to indicate that this will be the last of the set of questions. Various industry stakeholders from different sectors, including the major income-generating sectors of the economy, decide on their transformation plans based on the shape, the size, the characteristics of a particular sector. Upon receiving such applications, the Minister of Trade and Industry then apply his mind to the process to determine whether to develop a sector code or not. So that is in relation to the first question that was asked. The DTI has, however, identified a need to develop a transformation plan for the mass grocery industry of the wholesale and retail sector based on the provisions of the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Policy. A need for the study was informed by the low level of transformation in the sector, which contributes approximately 13% of the gross domestic product of the country and accounts for the employment of about 18% of South Africans who are in employment. It's also one of the few sectors of the economy where there is mass participation by Black people. However, this takes place mostly in the informal industry. Currently, the level of transformation in the sector is low. Most retailers are at BBBEE level 4 or lower. It is important to note that transformation in the mass grocery industry cannot be addressed without looking at transformation across the value chain, from farm to fork, as they say, due to the strategic interdependencies of the industry with other industries. This would encompass the Agri-BEE Charter, the Financial Sector Charter, and other relevant charters. The DTI strongly believes that transformation also fosters long-term value chain partnership. On the second question that the Honourable Lees has asked, the codes of good practice are universal and cover all sectors of the economy, except those that are peculiar and they have developed their own sector codes. On the third question, currently the DTI is working with the Department of Mineral Resources to ensure alignment between the two policies. On the fourth question, yes, my colleague, the Minister of Trade and Industry, is aware that certain sectors require licenses, and as such, the conditions for applying for licenses need to be aligned to the relevant sector code. And on the fifth question that was asked, my colleague, the Minister of Trade and Industry, is willing to consider all the challenges and peculiarities of different sectors and provide guidance in their implementation. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Liz, do you have any follow-up question? Any other follow-up question besides Honorable Liz? Honorable van Lingen.
Thank you, Chairperson. Of moet ek nou Afrikaans praat, want jy praat so mooi Afrikaans op die radio. We would like to know the licenses for the casino industry has been issued more than 10 years ago. And there was a special appeal from them that their licenses that were issued are not in line with the original sector code. And this is why we've asked the question, or they have asked the question, as to whether there certain exemptions will be considered or not.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. I think the specific nature of the question is different to the original question, but I would be very happy to pass it on to the Minister of Trade and Industry and perhaps ask my colleague, the Minister, to directly communicate with the Honourable Member. And given the nature of the question in my earlier reply, may I just state for the record that the jobs growth in the Northern Cape between October 2010, when the new growth path was adopted, and June 2013 was 34,000 new jobs. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Is there any follow-up question? Not new questions? In the absence of any, then we shall conclude the questions to the Minister of Trade and Industry. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for standing in. May we then proceed to the next set of questions. Question number 136, by Honorable Minister, Communications.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just to say that Deputy Minister Stella Ndebeni-Abrams and I would have been quite happy if the Minister of Economic Development continued to answer questions, as he's very close to achieving a Guinness Book of Records. So we have been quite happy. Also because I have just stepped off a plane from a very cold country, Estonia, this morning, and I've made my way here. So I'm half asleep and half awake. So I don't take full responsibility for, he's giving the notes, for the answers I gave. But let me say, yes, of course, the question is about and appropriate about the SABC, what's being done about it. Essentially, we're saying, yes, we are attending to the matter. The first part of the question, we say that we have, in fact, formed a joint task team, which comprises representatives of the SABC, obviously, the Auditor General's Office, the
Honorable
National
Members,
Treasury.
order. Sorry, Honorable Minister. Can you please listen to the responses? Because that will avoid a situation of us, instead of making follow-up questions, and we end up asking new questions. Honorable Minister.
Yes, which re-emphasizes my point that maybe we should have asked the Minister of Economic Development to answer all the questions. But to come back to the point, wherever it was that I was at, yes, this is it. The fourth party, obviously, is our department. So we've set up this joint task team. Amongst its concerns is to examine, firstly, or to finalize the shareholder compact of the SABC. We've said we're not happy with the shareholder compact, that it must include the recommendations of previous Auditor General's reports. And we're about to finalize that. We, in fact, have got a response from the SABC this week, and we need to finalize that. The second aspect is progress on digital migration. I think people are familiar with that. We need to move from analog TV to digital TV. The third aspect is to look at the long-term financial sustainability of the SABC. Yes, they've met the requirements in terms of the guarantees given by government, the loan that they got of 1.4 million in 2009, but now what about its long-term financial sustainability? Fourthly, key positions, including the CFO, the COO, and so on, have not been filled. We have been assisting, without undermining their operational autonomy, to finalize those positions. And from what I can tell, we're very close now to solving the impasse over the position of the COO. And finally, of course, we're looking at the multi-choice SABC contract that's been finalized to actually establish more from the SABC exactly where it fits in terms of their long-term strategy and indeed how financially sustainable it is. In addition, in reply to Section C, what are further relevant details? We have, as the Department of Communications, communicated to the CEO of the SABC to say we want reports on time. But on our side, to be fair, we haven't been giving them a sufficient enough feedback. So we commit ourselves to engaging more rigorously with them on their quarterly reports. It applies not just to the SABC, but other state-owned companies too. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Muntiti. Any follow-up question? In the absence of any, is there a follow-up question? Okay, may proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Minister, I'd like to know regarding the analog and digital, what about the poorest of the poor? Would government be subsidizing them?
Yes, the policy hasn't changed. Government committed itself in its broadband digital migration policy to contribute possibly around 70% of the cost of the set-top boxes. As you might know, it's in the public domain. We've had a team of facilitators trying to settle the disputes between broadcasters on whether the set-top box, which is basically a decoder in common sense language, should have some sort of control system. Big word is encryption, where it should have some system that you have to actually access in a particular way to watch the programs, like you would do, for example, on multi-choice or DSTV, whether it should have that or not. Those facilitators have reached an impasse in respect of the negotiations. They have brought their final report to us. We are going to Cabinet shortly to take a final decision on the matter.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Any follow-up questions? In absence of any, then we shall proceed to question number 140, Honourable Minister.
There's a question on the SABC and USASA, Universal Service and Access Agency of South Africa, and the challenges they are having flowing from issues of governance. Well, these are the replies we got from the respective parties. The SABC says that where losses have been identified in the first instance and recovery is required, disciplinary and or criminal action will be instituted to ensure recovery. Secondly, an accurate estimate of time cannot be provided as each case is different. Thirdly, on answer B, the amounts for the 2012-2013 financial period, Chairperson, are as follows. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure not condoned, 50,000 rands. Payment for services not provided and disciplinary action initiated against the responsible persons, 2.4 million. On USASA, where losses have been identified and recovery is required, disciplinary and or criminal action will be instituted to ensure recovery. An accurate estimate of time, again, cannot be provided as the cases obviously differ. B, criminal cases were brought against 7 of its former employees that were alleged to have transgressed the supply chain management processes in the 2010-2011 financial year with Midrand Commercial Crime Unit. There are no claims or losses in the subsequent year. Civil action was instituted, they go on to say, against all 7 to retrieve losses suffered as much of the said amount as possible. USASA has instituted legal processes to recoup the funds from the transgressors. USASA has also solicited the involvement of the Hawks and awaits progress in this regard. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Honourable Mabija is not in the House. Did she request anybody to stand in for her? Okay, in the absence of that, is there any other follow-up question? In the absence of any other follow-up question, we shall then proceed to question number 162, Honourable Minister.
Yes, thank you again. It's Ms. P.M. Themba, who's my friend and didn't think would ask such a difficult question, but here it is. She asks about the post office relating to the inaccessibility of, which is a very good question, I think, of the post office for disabled people, then the lack of proper management during the last illegal strike, and the lack of a proactive plan. Our reply in brief is, having discussed this with the post office, is that on accessibility, it said that the installation of counters for the alternatively abled in Sapor branches. There are currently 906 branches that have been installed. The action plan is to actually install a further 423 over the next 3 years. The balance will be done over the further 3 years. In respect of installation of ramps for the alternatively abled at Sapor branches, currently there are 1,461 branches which have these ramps, and the plan is to install a remaining 119 over the next 2 years. Needless to say, as a ministry, we'll welcome a follow-up question on that to monitor progress as regularly as might be possible. In respect of the illegal strikes, Sapor management implemented various contingency measures to ensure that customer inconvenience was mitigated. The measures being, 1, the collection of mail from Wits Post and Swane retail offices after hours. 2, mail destined for areas outside of Gauteng was moved generally around midnight. 3, in addition to replacement labor, administration staff from the head office and the unaffected surrounding offices was utilized in various depots to assist in clearing the backlog. 4thly, suppose key and major account holders were individually communicated to in order to explain the situation and the contingency measures undertaken. We have, as a ministry and department, met the Sapor board, I think 5 times over the last 3.5 months. On 2 of these occasions, we discussed this matter, and on 1 occasion, some very deliberate consideration was given to it, and we are prepared to work with them to assist them to ensure that they are better prepared to manage strikes. In respect of section sub C of the question, with a lack of proactive action, well, in a way, by answering B, has been communicated the attempts being made to be proactive, if you like, but additionally, all contingency plans, actions planned for and undertaken are intended, of course, to mitigate any potential loss of revenue that might ensue as a consequence of any strike action, legal or otherwise. Suppose governance framework provides for the board to take decisions in the form of board resolutions and has clear processes for the implementation of board resolutions, as well as enforcement mechanisms to be applied in the event of failure to implement such resolutions. Suppose is unaware, it says, of any board resolutions that management has failed to implement. On the delays in filling vacancies, suppose a number of vacancies across the business and appropriate processes are being followed to ensure that suitable candidates are identified to fill these vacancies. Over the last 6 months, the organization has advertised a number of posts that are set to be filled in the immediate future. Yet again, we have been pursuing them, Chairperson, rigorously on this matter. We want those key posts filled. We think they're seriously challenged as it is, and with these vacancies, they're not able to cope with some of their challenges. So we are, in fact, meeting them very shortly in the next 2 to 3 weeks to take those matters further. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Honourable Temba? No follow-up question. Is there a follow-up question? You may proceed, Honourable.
Thanks, Honourable House Chairperson. To the Minister, you know they call the South African Post Office now snail mail. If you sent a postcard now, you might just get there by December. If you sent a letter to Estonia, it might never get there. Minister, tell me, even in the UK they've had problems. Royal Mail has been privatised. And I see, you know, with email and with the communications these days, very few people write letters. They might use it to send a parcel or whatever. To resolve this, do you think that to make the post office viable in the long term, there's the Post Office Bank, which I think there's a bill going through at the moment. Do you think that that will rectify the situation into making the post office a real viable entity for the future? Thanks.
Honourable Minister, you would note probably that the question is not quite relevant to what has been asked as insofar as follow-up is concerned. But you are at liberty if you feel like responding to the new issues raised by the Honourable Member.
Well,
but you're not obliged to.
Yeah, no, I understand that. He's likely to pose that as a formal question if I don't reply now. And to save time for everybody, there's a simple answer, which is that, in fact, we agree that not all that you say, but the subtext of what you're saying, that the post office chairperson, it's the internet age now. Even in our own country, mobile phones reach the most rural areas. People use SMSs. Not only our post office, but post office all over the world are similarly challenged. As I said, I came from Finland and Estonia. Interestingly, they remain in state control in both these countries next door to each other. We discussed with them yesterday morning, how do they function? A whole lot of ideas. We're going to table a report to the House, hopefully at some stage. You will see. If you've got any proposals, please, let's have them. But what we have done, Chairperson, we've asked our own department to start by using the post office more than they use private sector courier services. Now, obviously, the post office on its side has to show its greater efficiency in order for government, for municipalities, for provinces, perhaps for Parliament too, to use them more efficiently. So we are urging, we're going to go at some appropriate stage to Cabinet to say, why don't all departments prioritize using the post office? There are many other things the post office in a country like ours. Estonia is a very advanced country industrially, and so is Finland. We have huge underserviced areas. No private sector company is going to reach it. So the post office is here to stay. It's part of our developmental state ethos and orientation. We have to, and we're doing that in the first week of December. We are having a meeting with them and bringing in some experts to look at how a post office will function in a developing society, in an internet age, with such a high penetration of cell phones. It can be done. It's been done by other developing countries. And if you have any specific proposals, kindly send them to us. Thank you indeed.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Is there any other follow-up question? In the absence of any other follow-up question, then we shall proceed to question number 143. I don't know if the arrangement is still the same, that it will be answered by the Deputy Minister. Okay. Yes, 163. Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. The question relates to the findings by the AG and how we are going to address those challenges that have been raised. It has been asked by Honourable Temba. Now, the responses are as follows, Honourable Chair. Firstly, as the department, we have made it a point that we have improved in terms of compliance with regards to the PFMA. That's the first thing. We have put policies and other measures in place to ensure that the department complies. Secondly, we haven't received any negative report with regards to the failure in terms of irregular expenditure in the previous financial year, which also indicates the fact that we have indeed improved. We have then put some measures in place to deal with irregular expenditure at the following levels. The first level being ensuring that supply chain management policies and procedures are in place so that we're able to ensure that procurement in the department is done within the laws and the regulations. This is done by the responsible unit, of course, supply chain management unit, together with the Departmental Bid Adjudication Committee as appointed by the Director General. On the second level, we have to ensure that the project managers are required to confirm the project deliverables before they procure the services, which means upon receival of the invoice, they must first check everything that is in place. They need to ensure that finance conducts due diligence to ensure that all required compliance requirements have been met before the procurement is done. The third level is to ensure that in case an irregularity has been detected in the process, the transaction is disclosed in the register and an investigation is undertaken to determine if there was negligence on the part of the officials, and the disciplinary steps are taken by the accounting officer if it has been discovered as such. On fruitless and wasteful expenditure, we have put internal controls in the form of policies and procedures to ensure that we prevent losses. Honourable members will know that fruitless and wasteful expenditure refers to the expenditure which was made in vain and would have been avoided had reasonable care been exercised. In the event that that expenditure is detected post that event, for example, a no-show in a hotel or loss of assets, an internal investigation is conducted to determine the circumstances that led to the expenditure being fruitless and wasteful. If the investigation confirms that there was indeed negligence, true recovery of the losses authorized. The department has to date recovered money from officials on all matters that were legally confirmed to be wasteful and fruitless due to non-compliance and negligence. In this financial year, honorable members, 32 fruitless and wasteful expenditures were recorded, and 20 of these have been finalized and recoveries were effected in 11 cases, whilst the 9 cases were written off. The other 12 are still under investigation. Now, how do we then ensure that we prevent the recurrence of findings and therefore strengthen compliance? We have ensured that we develop a comprehensive action plan that will force management to address all compliance issues in the department, including the findings made by the Auditor General. The action plan mainly focuses on the following: the issues that were raised by the AG. Human resource, we have to fill all the vacancies in management and ensure that there's performance of each and every employee. On performance information, we need to make it a point that the targets that are set all talk to the SMART principles as the AG expects from us. On the expenditure management, payment of suppliers in 30 days as agreed by our government against the correct invoices has to be ensured that it happens. On supply chain management, constant monitoring of procurement requests from business units to ensure that it is in line with the departmental policies and procedures. On financial management, accurate disclosures and recording of financial information in the quarterly financial statements. We need to ensure that we upgrade the IT infrastructure. The Director General, through various governance committees, provides oversight of the work of the department to ensure compliance with policies and procedures so that we address that challenge of the department being referred to as being a leaderless department. On training of officials on compliance, all new employees are going to be trained and inducted on the departmental processes and policies. Lastly, as I have indicated earlier, the department has indeed improved, particularly on compliance in the supply chain management. The AG has already spoken to this. It is, however, acknowledged that continuous effort through implementation of this action plan, our department will attain a clean audit come 2014. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. Honorable Temba, any follow-up question?
Satisfied.
Satisfied with the answer. Any other follow-up question? In the absence of any, we shall then proceed to question number 165, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you again, Honorable Chair. The question has been asked by Honorable Jacobs in terms of the strategies that have been implemented and developed by the department to improve accountability and other challenges. Honorable members, you will recall that at some point we went to the portfolio committee in the NA, of which we still expect to come this side to ensure that we present the action plan that we have developed in the department. We have to ensure that we strengthen the performance agreements of the employees to ensure that everybody is held accountable and delivers as per the expectations. A comprehensive plan again has been developed to address all the issues that has been raised. We are awaiting your confirmation of the date so that we come this side to brief you about it and engage on it so that you advise us. We aim to achieve again a clean audit through the implementation of the plan. That's if you support the plan that we're going to present, and as the Minister has indicated, we will welcome any other suggestions that come from your side in terms of addressing all the challenges that have been raised. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. Honorable Jacobs. No follow-up question from Honorable Jacobs. Any other follow-up question from any member? In the absence of any, then let me thank the Honorable Minister and his deputy for availing themselves to answer questions in the House. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We shall then proceed to question number 152 to be answered by the Deputy Minister. No. To be answered by the Minister. It's in 14. Oh yes. 146, not 152. Honorable Minister. Energy. Is there a point of order?
Yeah, just point of order, just to get some order, especially to us here. You're saying 142. Now, the questions are actually on different pages. Now, we must look for it. Do we have the page number there?
Page 38.
Thank you very much.
Okay. No. Honorable members, there's no confusion. What you need to do is just to follow what the presiding officer is directing. That's all. So there's no confusion. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson, Your Excellencies, Honorable Members of the National Council of Provinces. The Department of Energy, in collaboration with other government departments, has made substantial progress regarding the facilitation of the emergence of a biofuel industry. The reply to Part A of the question is as follows. In Government Notice number R719 of 30th September 2013, published in Government Gazette number 36890, the Minister of Energy announced on the 1st of October 2015, as the effective date for regulations regarding the mandatory blending of biofuels with petrol and diesel. The mandatory blending regulations were promulgated on the 23rd of August 2012 to come into effect on a date still to be announced by the Minister. The determination of the effective date sends a positive signal to potential investors, as it will provide certainty regarding a secure market for locally manufactured biofuels. A Biofuels Implementation Committee chaired by the Department of Energy and comprising the oil and biofuel industries has been established to address all matters pertaining to the practicalities of blending biofuels with petrol and diesel. The inaugural meeting of the BIC was held on the 30th of August 2013, and the next meeting is to be held on the 29th of October 2013. Meanwhile, the Cabinet-mandated Interdepartmental Biofuels Task Team continues to provide the necessary guidance and oversight on matters pertaining to the implementation of the biofuels industrial strategy. The response to Part B of the question is as follows. Matters that are still outstanding are the conclusion of 1, the biofuels pricing framework, including the administration of the biofuels subsidy scheme, and 2, the criteria for eligibility of manufacturers of biofuels for the subsidy scheme. I turn to the reply to C of the question, which is as follows. The biofuels industry strategy is premised on, amongst others, the creation of a substantial number of new jobs through broadening agricultural development by bringing marginal and underutilized farming land into production for biofuel feedstocks, and deepening agricultural development by unlocking animal feed value chains which are currently import-intensive, but which would benefit substantially from the byproducts of biofuel production. Among projects that are furthest in development are the IDC's Arenjo project and Mabele Fuels Pty Limited sorghum-based bioethanol project at Bothaville in the Free State. Mabele Fuels has indicated that its 2.2 billion, 185 million liters per annum capacity plant will deliver 15,000 to 18,000 direct and indirect jobs to the Free State province. Although one would not like to hastily commit to a particular figure, I hope this does give an indication of the job creation prospects that the potential of this sector has. Various meetings with relevant stakeholders are being held in order to expedite the resolution of all outstanding matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Mnguni.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, maize was ruled out as a feedstock for biofuel due to that it will increase the prices, and as such will make the staple food for the poorest of poor more difficult to access. Are there any crop that has been recommended or that the department would like to recommend so that it acts as a feedstock for biofuels in order to create jobs?
Honorable Minister.
We are in consultation with the agricultural sector as to look at alternative agricultural products that can be utilized in regard to the manufacture of biofuels. We are sensitive, as you have said, that maize still forms a staple diet in this country. So we would not like to see farmers moving away from maize production for edible stock and in turn concentrating solely for biofuels. So the alternatives are being investigated so that justice can be done to the individuals who act in the agricultural productive sector so that their businesses remain viable. But the other end of the equation should also be to ensure that we retain and maintain the capability of South Africans who depend on maize as a staple diet to be able to have access to it without it being very highly priced. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Is there any follow-up question? In the absence of any, we shall then proceed to question number 152. Honorable Minister.
The reply is as follows to section A of the question. Yes, empirical research indicates that electricity tariff increases over the past 3 years have pushed inflation up and might have some marginal industries, for example, foundries and smelters, being economically unviable. The second portion of the question, the reply thereto is as follows. This trend of steep tariff increases is not peculiar to South Africa in relation to other developing countries. In contrast to other developing countries, South Africa has embarked on a massive build program which is mostly funded from tariffs. Other developing countries, particularly in Africa, do not have the same scale of capital expansion, and therefore their tariff increases are not as steep as those in South Africa. Incidentally, the steepness of the tariff increases is a function of our past, in respect of which we kept tariff increases very low for almost 1.5 decades. As we begin the capital expansion program, in this regard, we refer to the development of Medupi and Kusile. It is inevitable that tariffs will have to increase. Nonetheless, we do not believe that they have to increase at too fast a rate. In terms of section B of the question, insofar as global trends are concerned, electricity tariffs are much higher in the developed world due to electricity infrastructure investments that have already been made or are being made. In other words, globally, the trend is to avoid concentrating capital investment over a short period, but rather to roll it out constantly over a longer period in order to avoid steep increases in tariffs. with regard to the third section of the question, South Africa has now introduced the Integrated Resource Plan, which outlines the constant investments that needs to be made over a period up to 2050. In addition, a funding model is being designed to implement the IRP in a manner that will keep tariff increases affordable to the economy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Is there anybody who's standing in for Honorable Zikhale? Okay, Honorable Mguni.
Thank you, Minister, for your answer. We just want to find out that in the midst of this electricity price increases, some companies like NIMEC that manufacture automotive parts that mainly export to Europe and the US, when you met them early last year, they said that they might be thinking of having other alternative energy or perhaps moving to other countries if our price increases, electricity tariffs are increasing. I just want to find out if there are any other companies that folded or decided to move out of the country due to these electricity price increases.
Honorable Minister.
We are mindful of the competitive nature of the industry, where companies in particular would like to be charged a particular tariff rate. But as we said in our earlier part of our response, electricity prices in South Africa were kept at an inordinately low level for a number of decades. So in order to ensure that there can be security of supply, that the equipment that we use can be up to date, there will be a need as we put new power stations into stream, that the tariffs that are charged meet the demands of industries, but also that are relevant and make it possible for us to be able to improve the equipment that we have. And by so doing, bringing more power stations into stream, eventually that the price should be such that consumers can afford. But there has to be a balance as to the outlay to ensure security of supply and also to keep a keen eye on tariffs that are in sync with what South African economy demands.
Thank you very much. Is there any other follow-up question? Honorable Worth.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask, and I hope I'm not deviating too far from the question as put here, but what does the Minister think the green power, energy sources, such as solar power, wind-driven power, what is your estimation do you think is going to contribute towards the total energy production of South Africa in a few years' time? 5%, 3%, whatever the amount. Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Cabinet has taken a decision that will utilize all energy sources. So we are busy with renewables. Within the remit of that, we are looking at solar energy, we are looking at windmill energy, and also as part of the remit of our sources of energy supply, we are also looking at nuclear. So we are utilizing all forms of energy. We are also mindful of the coal that we have as a resource in this country. But in order to mitigate our carbon imprint, we are also placing emphasis on the other forms of energy. So as South Africa, we are utilizing all the resources that we can. So it will be a mixed supply.
Thanks, Honourable Minister. Is there any other follow-up question? In the absence of any, we shall now proceed to question number 154. Honourable Minister.
the reply to the question is as follows. Yes, the implementation of solar water heating program requires the utilization of systems that meet 70% local content on collector and tank as designated under the Preferential Procurement Framework Act. The Department of Energy has developed a contracting model to maximize localization and job creation. The revised contracting model entails, amongst others, incentivizing local manufacturing and empowerment of small and medium enterprises for the installation of solar water systems. It is expected that the revised contracting model would increase the local content and the number of jobs through the value chain of the solar water heater program in terms of local manufacturing, distribution, and installation. The department has developed an online monitoring system for verifying the number of systems installed. In addition, the department has established a dedicated project management unit to monitor and report on the achieved deliverables, including jobs created, small and medium enterprise development, and number of systems installed. A steering committee has also been established comprising the Departments of Energy, Trade and Industry, Economic Development, and state-owned entities like ESCOM, the IDC, SALGA, and National Treasury. In addition, the department provides quarterly progress reports to the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission. Thank you.
Honorable Mguni, are you still standing in for Honorable Khan? Okay, no follow-up question. Okay, is there any other follow-up, Honorable Lees?
Honourable Chair, thank you very much to the Minister. Mr. Minister, you talk about empowering small, medium contractors, which is great. It's really needed. However, the question really is the competence of people who've already erected these things. Because when you drive past the areas where the solar water heaters have been installed, very few of them actually face north. By far the majority that I've seen, and I haven't done a proper census, face in all sorts of other directions, which makes them, particularly if they face south, almost useless. Is this not an issue that needs to be dealt with?
Honourable Minister.
I'm not sure to which particular area you are referring and to which area you have gone to, but the specifications are such that when they are installed on houses, because of the weight of the equipment, the house has to be structurally sound, so that determines where and how you can install. And in most cases that I'm aware of, it's a basic function to ensure that they should face in a direction where the maximum amount of heat can be generated so that the system functions optimally. So if you could provide the information that you have, but also as a member of Parliament, there should be recourse that we can effect for our constituents by pointing out where contractors have installed in a manner that's not in line with the prescripts as installation should take place. So we'd be interested to learn about the areas that you are referring to and what has been done in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Is there any other follow-up question? Are you sure? Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair. Minister, I would just like to know the service on these units. If something should go wrong, who would be also looking at it? And how would that cost be? Would it go to government, or is it like when it's installed that it is then the responsibility of the occupant? If I can just know, how do you handle that? Because I know that sometimes if water gets cut off, for instance, some of these units, and you take the water out, these units like they've got an overflow, but they can develop problems and they burn out. And you have to redo the element or put in a water pump and blah, blah, blah. So my question is just, if something goes wrong, who will take the responsibility? Is it the occupant or does government, or how do we do that? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
There are a number of factors there. Obviously, government assists in the rollout of the facilities, but there are contractors involved in the installation thereof. And then after installation, at times, there are unforeseen circumstances. The initial rollout of the solar water geysers, some of those components were manufactured outside South Africa. And you find that the water quality outside South Africa and the different levels and degrees of water quality, depending where you are in the country, also becomes a factor. So I'm saying that all those factors have to be addressed and then responsibility taken. In most cases, the people who benefit from this, from this program are indigent and poor people. So government becomes sensitive that they cannot always mitigate all the aspects that are malfunctioning. So we have a responsibility to ensure that contractors perform according to their contracts and that we assist the poor and indigent so that they also derive the best of services.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. We shall then now proceed to question number 184 by Honourable Mokhobi. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. The reply to the question is as follows. To Section A of the question, yes, the Department of Energy, in collaboration with German International Cooperation and the South African Local Government Association, have embarked on a mentorship and coaching initiative as part of the broader South African-German energy program to assist municipalities in planning and the implementation of the energy efficiency and demand-side management program. B, the plans and strategies to resolve the EEDSM implementation challenges entails capacity building, workshops, development and implementation, monitoring, and tools such as comprehensive guidelines for the development of business plan and reporting mechanisms, technology identification and selection, and support on procurement procedures, including the development of templates for technical tender specifications and proposals. One, in this regard, the department has conducted 4 capacity building workshops to empower participating municipalities on project design implementation in accordance with developed guidelines. 2, municipalities should be provided with enough resources to better improve management of the program implementation, establishment of energy office with specific focus on energy efficiency and clean energy. 3, the initiative by the Ministry's office to regularly engage with political counterparts at local government, that is, mayoral officers, councillors, and municipal managers, is one of the interventions put in place to ensure improvements in the implementation of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honourable members. Honourable Mokhobi.
I'm okay.
Are you okay? All right. Is there any other follow-up question? In the absence of any, we shall then proceed to question number 185 by Honourable Mokhobi. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The reply thereto is as follows. Yes, the department has been collaborating with municipalities, National Treasury, and the regulator in addressing electricity distribution problems, particularly the decline in service delivery due to deteriorating infrastructure. The approach to distribution asset management program is intended to address these problems. Insofar as municipal tariffs, a guideline has been developed as a means of regulating municipal tariff increases in line with the constitutional requirement for national government to determine norms and standards for municipal surcharges. B, the framework for infrastructure rehabilitation is at an advanced stage in line with the approach to distribution asset management, starting with 10 identified municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Mokobi. I'm okay. Satisfied. Any follow-up question? In the absence of any wish, is there? Oh, Honorable Van Lingen, sorry.
Chairperson, may I just ask the Minister, he says they're starting with 10 municipalities, but I thought there were 23 of those municipalities that had critical problems and that they would all be addressed. And then this program for the maintenance of infrastructure needs to kick in very quickly. And although 6% of the annual tariffs must be used on maintenance, the municipalities do not do that. So I want to know from the Minister, when will he implement this program that he's talking about, and what will it cost? Does he know offhand?
I don't know if the Minister will be able to answer the cost question.
Thank you, House Chairperson. I would like to perhaps respond to the first portion of the honourable member's question in terms of the number. Our estimation is that there might be more than 23 municipalities that need urgent assistance, but 10 have been prioritized as being in a very perilous and crucial state. So across various provinces, the department and the stakeholders that it engages with will address the 10 most crucial ones. In regard to the cost implications, we would be able to send the House the relevant information, but I do not have the requisite figures at hand right now.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Is there any follow-up question? No, any other follow-up question? We shall then proceed to question number 203. Honourable Minister.
The reply to the question is as follows. The INIR report has not yet been tabled in Cabinet because it is still undergoing other government processes before it is tabled there. The other government strategic nuclear stakeholders have requested to review the report prior to it being released to the public. So the short answer is that there are other government entities that we are engaging with regard to the refining of the report. Thereafter, it's tabled at Cabinet. Cabinet expresses its view, and then with the necessary amendments, then it's made available to public for public comment.
Honourable Van Lingen.
Chairperson, I thank the Minister for his reply, but I'm a little bit confused because in the Select Committee of the NCOP, we have been told that by the department that this report is before Cabinet, and until Cabinet is done with it, we can't see it. Now, the Minister is saying to us it has not been to Cabinet, and I'm wondering where it is now and how long this process will take. Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I'm not exactly sure what was reported to the Select Committee. I was not part of that particular meeting, but I'll find out. But the process is as I've articulated it. Before it goes to Cabinet, it has to have all the relevant details. Then Cabinet, as a collective, will apply its mind thereto. and give the department the requisite guidance. Thereafter, with the incorporation of all the additional information, it will be made public, and members of the public will have adequate time to comment thereon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Let me take the opportunity, of course, to thank the Minister to have availed himself to answer questions in the House. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Ben Martins. That takes us then to the next set of questions of Labour. I'm informed that the Minister of Labour has mandated the Minister of Minerals, Deputy Minister of Minerals, to answer questions of Labour. Therefore, we shall proceed with question number 141. Honourable Deputy Minister.
House Chairperson, thank you very much, and thanks to the Honourable Mabija for the question. The reply is as follows. On question 141, the compensation fund continues to face the same challenges which were experienced in the financial year 2012-2013. The challenges experienced centered around human resource capacity and systems compatibility to enable the fund to deliver on its mandate. With regards to the issues raised in the AG's report, the position of Chief Financial Officer was filled to deal with audit findings and other challenges, improve the claims turnaround time.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Honourable Mabija is not in the House. Is there anybody that she had mandated to stand in for her?
The department is not a direct role player in collective bargaining processes. However, if there is a deadlock, the CCMA does not monitor developments in the labour market. The department does actually monitor on the website of the department. The most recent report of relevance is the 2012 Annual Industrial.
In the absence of any, then we shall proceed to the next question.
The department placed 269 employers under the DG review process. All the companies reviewed were issued with recommendations. With regards to B, we have, as part of in order to ensure the transformation of the labour market as envisaged by the employment equity legislation in this financial year, is to deal decisively with those that have not implemented the recommendations of the regulation.
Chairperson, very quickly, there are those companies whose of the costs for non-compliance increase the penalty for non-compliant, and that's
Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you for legislation to deal with the groups that were called in terms of compliance. It's an ongoing. The best we can do is to ask the Minister of Labour to give update to members in the various select committees on this matter.
Okay. Thank you very much. By Honourable Temba, Honourable Deputy Minister.
House Chairperson, once more, by CPIX plus 1.5%, and the current wage determination will lapse on the 29th of February 2016. This was done regardless of their nationality. The basis for our labour laws is employment. With regards to the strikes in the farming sector, has requested NEDLEC to look at the issues come up with a transformational charter that will address the plight of farm workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Minister, Honourable Temba. Right. In the absence of any, then we shall proceed.
Follows the CCMA, or the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration, has a dedicated, which is aimed at ensuring that it organizes consultative meetings with bargaining and statutory councils, which exist in certain sectors. The CCMA is active.
Question, Marshal? No? Any member? Do you have any follow-up question?
And once more, thank you very much. And to the process of engaging with organized business and organized labor to arrange for a labor does, however, monitor developments in the labor market and does engage parties to certain that are aimed at countering October 2012, leading to the release of the full package of issues to respond and similar initiative process to explore a new centralized bargaining arrangement in the platinum sector for AMCU. So that is the response, and Chair, and others, Akharele.
Stick to the mandate. Stick. Honorable Sibande, I've stood in for the minister, and of course welcome the
8 relates to building capacity by the Department of Transport. 11-12 restructured the department, which led to the public plans and annual owned entities in all modes of the oversight function by the department over its entities. I thank you, Chairperson.
I thought you. All right. Honorable Sibande, are you satisfied?
The establishment of the new coach building locomotive assembly plant in Gauteng province. The building of a local factory for the manufacturing of the trains is part of government strategy to revitalize 100 people that will actually be trained. The agreement for local production and goals of the Industrial Policy Action Plan 2, which is IPEP 2 of the government. The factory will be built in Ekurhuleni, Gauteng, and will be operational by July 2016. The land space for the factory is approximately 35 hectares, which is 1.2 kilometers long, and full production of the local factory is scheduled for September 2020.
I'm covered.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, Honorable Sibande. The question also relates to whether the department has finalized its National Transport Master Plan, which we refer to as NETMAP. And the answer to the question is yes. The National Transport Master Plan 2050 preparation has been finalized, and final reports for phase 1 to 4 for the National Department and for each provincial chapters are readily available for reference prior to Cabinet final approval. The NETMAP 2050 process was finalized in May 2012. This was followed by an extensive second round consultation with critical stakeholders to minimize any margins in advented errors. The department is in the process of convening an interministerial cabinet committee of 15 honorable ministers to give the NETMAP 2050 final approval before it is tabled before the full cabinet for approval. Whilst the proposed interministerial cabinet committee is yet to approve 2050 recommendations, however, any vote 2050. I thank you.
7-3 by Honorable Boroto. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you again, Chairperson, Rural Transport Networks. And the answer to the question is yes, to assist district municipalities to develop integrated public long-term. The department shall facilitate the rollout of the integrated public transport in all district municipalities. A public transport network planning approach would integrate.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Proceed to question number 198, Honorable Deputy Minister. Oh yes.
Okay. From road to rail in Mpumalanga, and B, fast-tracking roads in the northwest. C, integrated transport of coal from road to rail in Mpumalanga. An interministerial committee on energy has been commissioned a number of working groups. The group is the one looking at the development and implementation of mechanisms to rehabilitate this work, and work continues to happen on the identified roads in province. The question related to fast-tracking roads in northwest. Roads have been identified in terms of in the infrastructure reporting model for future expansion. In fast-tracking the maintenance of roads in northwest, Central has been identified improvement on other major infrastructure projects. Progress has been made on integrating different modes of transport in the 5 and 7 and are supported by conditional grants from National Treasury, known as Public Transport Infrastructure Grant, and the Public Transport Network Operational Grant. The plan will become more meaningful methods, additional operating services on over 250 kilometers of trunk, and Fine and Swane are busy constructing infrastructure and will open services in 2015. The last aspect of the question is related to the report here that after 2010, PRASA supported by government for the design, Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. In addition, platforms depots, workplace improvements, etc. PRASA has identified key commuter corridors for modernization and enhancing capacity. As part of this, over 579 coaches and 57 stations had been refurbished and upgraded in the 2012-13 financial year. This is part of government's effort to keep the metro systems operational and ensuring that the system responds to the travel demands of citizens. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Minister, Honourable Mboroto. Okay. Follow-up question, Honourable Ngube.
Thanks, House Chair. My question will be, does the department and or PRASA have a program of community education or the commuters education? What is normally happening in Gauteng, if the train is late, they'll ban the train when it comes or mess up things in the station. Is there any, as they are upgrading the stations and the signs, is there any program that they're putting in place on education community to preserve what they have? Thanks. And not take anger to a high level.
Thanks. Honourable Deputy Minister.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I think this is an important question, which I think is the responsibility for all of us. When opening Bridge City on Saturday last week, the President made a call to all South Africans not to destroy their property. And I think this is also what the Minister of COGTA is saying, and therefore it's the message from ourselves as well, to say it doesn't matter how angry people are, it doesn't matter whether they want and demand services, but they can't destroy what they have in order to have what they don't have. And this is a message from all of us. And of course, we have a program. We're saying that every time we address communities. But of course, I think taking it as a program, it calls for all of us to do it because it affects not only the Department of Transport, not only PRASA, not only the Department of COGTA, but it affects South Africans per se. And I think it's the message that we must take out to our communities. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Any other follow-up question? In the absence of any, may I therefore, can we proceed to question number 198 by Honourable Falco? Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Chair. The question 198 asks whether the department has any plans and strategies in place to address and resolve the lack of funding in order to undertake road maintenance. And the answer to the question is yes. The Department of Transport established the Samba Sonke program, a provincial road maintenance program in April 2011. The program is funded through the Provincial Road Maintenance Grant to supplement the provincial equitable share in provinces. The provincial roads budget from the equitable share addresses the new roads construction projects. SANRAL, as an entity of the department, constructs new roads within the tolls as well as non-toll budgets. The current backlog in infrastructure has been quantified and amounts to more than 149 billion rand. There are therefore plans within the MTEF to address the 149 billion rand backlog. However, it will not come at once. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable Fago. Any follow-up?
Satisfied. Thanks.
Remember the issue relating to the Gauteng project and the Gautrains, the cry that were there in relation to public participation. Is the department
First, the processes that are laid out in the Constitution of the Republic demand that we involve public. So consultation, the communities, what we refer to as transport councillors. Of course, the whole arrangement in South Africa is that you have local government, you have provincial government, you have the national government, and the responsibility of doing that as mandated by the Constitution, but of course, as per our.
In the absence of any, that then brings us to the conclusion of questions relevant to transport. Made a little bit difficult because as and when I've been looking at it, I'm asking myself, but what questions are you going to? Our apologies, or my apologies for that. To the questions. page 34.
It's an honor to stand in on behalf of the Minister of Cogta in the world. Tons, 650,000 tons of South African fat going to the European Union market. To the honourable member. By the United Arab Emirates at 8.4% and Saudi Arabia phytosanitary regulations defined for protecting the health of, on the citrus industry and value chain, which play a significantly important role in management steps for CBS to the EU. This was implemented during the season. South Africa was confident that the tendency of CBS symptoms to appear over time in storage. However, visual notifications of CBS, together with the citrus industry and other role players, had several meetings to discuss strategies to deal with it. And then further, Japan, People's Republic of China, India, Iran, Africa, to ensure compliance when exporting citrus to the above-mentioned countries. Furthermore, for other provinces where CBS is found, the consignments are approved for export. For fruit flies and FCM, fruit test. I hope that that reply is to the satisfaction of the member.
All right. In the absence of any other member, Honourable Worth, follow-up questions. We then proceed to the next.
With the member, that question will stand over. And we've informed the
Honourable Minister.
Chairperson, thank you very much. The producers as vital role players to ensuring food towards the support and development of subsistence and will address the many challenges faced by producers. These strategies also encourage farmers and other role players to participate in development and support Africa, Mafisa. The strategies and programs therefore make intervention, development, information is also being implemented to ensure this. The initiative intends to support subsistence and smallholder producers to put 2030. The department...
Very much, Minister.
Mr. Still greeting the Deputy Minister because you are supporting.
Chairperson, in fact, you're very, very correct. I was leaning over to my colleague to ask whether he wouldn't mind taking that. No, Chairperson, I think I think it would be most correct that I relay that to the Minister and that a written reply be provided to the member. Thanks.
That will only be fair. Any other follow-up questions? Okay. Then we shall proceed to question. Honourable Jacobs.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Chair, since we come from the agricultural province, I know maybe the Deputy Minister won't have the answers. Maybe he can send us that information. How many emerging farmers, as well as the farms, that they are assisting in the Free State?
All right. I think that will be taken into account of the earlier response, by the earlier response. Question number 172 by Honourable Sibande. Honourable Minister.
Chairperson, thank you very much. The World Organization for Animal Health, the OIE, conducted an assessment on the performance of veterinary service from the 1st of October to the 19th of October 2012. The department, together with the provincial veterinary services, has adopted a draft action plan following the Organization for Animal Health Performance of Veterinary Service report. The action plan is thus still in the consultation stage and has not been implemented, and therefore question B does not arise. The department intends to consult widely and work closely with stakeholders in finalizing the action plan. The development of the veterinary strategy requires a holistic approach and the involvement of all stakeholders. In this regard, the department intends to engage all stakeholders in the development of the strategy as the next step in the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Honourable Sibande. He's not here. Any follow-up question? Honorable Worth?
Thanks, Chair. Through to the Minister. Veterinary services have complained that the vaccines that they are using, coming from amongst other places, honest to put, are ineffective. They're not working efficiently. Have you received any, your department received any notification to that effect? And what is being done about it? Thanks, Chair.
Honourable Minister.
Now, Chairperson, that similarly, could I request that the Minister, that the Honourable Member be replied to in writing?
Okay. May we agree on the following process, that because I anticipate a similar trend continuing, that if a minister stands in for another minister or a deputy minister standing in for another department, that we then hold back our follow-up questions, because obviously we won't be able to get the details as we wish to. Okay. Let's then proceed to question 178. Honourable Minister.
Chairperson, thank you very much. This is a fairly comprehensive reply. The forest sector in the past was dominated by large capital-intensive industries with high concentration in ownership and management. Communities did not own the land or plantations, they were just employed. The introduction of the triple BEE Forest Sector Charter, which is both a transformation and growth charter, and the thorough implementation of the land claims process has resulted in communities now owning the land. They further have joint ventures with established companies, thus securing a market for them at the end of the rotation period. All of the timber is sold at market value, and this ensures that the communities are advantaged as there's no loss in terms of the value of their timber. Companies provide business management and technical support to the communities, thus transferring skills to ensure that when the venture term ends, the community is able to run the business sustainably. In the departmental strategic plan, afforestation was identified as a rural-based activity that can contribute significantly to rural development, economic and employment opportunities of rural communities. In line with the commitments of the Forest Sector Charter to streamline licensing, water pricing and support for protection, promotion and enterprise development, the department funded the environmental impact assessment process in the Eastern Cape to assist communities with the afforestation licensing process. The Eastern Cape is dominated by high unemployment and high levels of poverty, and afforestation is a potential source of employment. The departmental initiative of conducting EIAs has benefited 35 communities. Once the licenses have been issued by the Department of Water Affairs, the communities will be able to start planting with the assistance of the private sector. The department is in the process of finalizing the protocols which will benefit the communities who are in partnership with established companies. The protocol document protects both parties and ensures that there's no exploitation of communities. The agreements that communities conclude with the big forestry companies often stipulate long-term supply of timber to the company concerned. This is not to the benefit of the community, as the company concerned will for a long time buy timber at a price that's not market-related, because this has been predetermined years ago. Communities will not be able to sell their timber to any other person other than the one that they have an agreement with. The department, through Section 29 of the National Forest Act, is able to enter into community forestry agreements. The department has received some requests from the Eastern Cape communities, such as in Tabankulu, Matatiele, Nkanduli, to enter into these agreements, and these are currently being investigated according to the prescripts of the Act. Most of the communities currently benefit in the state plantations, such as the small sawmillers who source timber from these plantations, other users for subsistence, where they source firewood, honey, and mushrooms. In terms of leased plantations, the private companies pay rental for the use of the land, and for those communities who have been identified as landowners through the land reform process are receiving this rental. At present, the department has disbursed lease rentals to the amount of 92 million rand to 8 settled land restitution claims collected from the Siyaqobeka and Singisi forestry packages. The department further encourages these communities to resolve issues that the communities experienced with the companies. In addition to this, the forestry companies are providing small business opportunities to local communities through their preferential procurement policies when awarding tenders for the following forestry activities: harvesting of timber and pulpwood, supply of raw material to small processors. Singisi and Siyaqobeka are also operating owner-driver schemes, in terms of which drivers from previously disadvantaged communities have been handed over the ownership of the trucks and the bell loaders that they're operating. These vehicles were fully paid for in 2011. The forestry companies are also facilitating and funding local economic development projects such as bee farming, nurseries, wood carving, poultry farming, sowing, vegetable gardens, sport and catering projects. The forestry companies have also granted bursaries to young people from the local communities to further their education at institutions of higher learning. They've enlisted young people from local communities as apprentices in the various engineering trades. They're also offering in-service training and leadership skills or learnerships in skills such as supervisory skills, clerical skills, chainsaw operators, mechanical harvester operators, bell logger operators, and firefighters to persons coming from the local communities. They're also providing funding to schools, creches, and winter schools in their area of operation as part of their social responsibility. Chairperson, I hope that that reply is sufficiently comprehensive to the members' liking.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Minister. That would then take us to question 182. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. The reply is no, the department has not developed any measures. The department has indicated its commitment to maintaining animal welfare standards. The department has also indicated that there are currently no legislative bases for preventing the exports of live ruminants by sea. The department utilizes suitable legislation to ensure that the animals in question are appropriately treated and transported in a suitable vessel through prior inspection of the vessel and conditions of quarantine. In this regard, animals are quarantined and monitored by the veterinary authorities and are certified for export if they meet the import requirements as outlined in the import permit issued by the importing country. And then secondly, the department has engaged the Mauritian veterinary authorities that upon arrival of the animals in Mauritius, the MVA has to ensure that the animals arrive safely and were appropriately fed and afforded water during the voyage. Through the platform offered by the World Organization for Animal Health, the department engages regularly with trade partners and the OIE, member states, to ensure that international norms and protocols are followed. The department is commencing with the legislative process to review the current legislation. The department intends to repeal all the existing pieces of legislation dealing with animal welfare as they are old and outdated. The department intends to consolidate these acts into one animal welfare bill. In this process, the department will work with all of its stakeholders. And then thirdly, as to why animals are not being slaughtered in South Africa and the meat be exported rather than live animals. Market dynamics dictate how the producers and traders do their business. In this case, it's not unusual internationally for the animals to be transported to a point of slaughter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Nel. And of course, appreciate the fact that you took time to answer on behalf of Minister Tina Joemat-Pettersson. Honorable members, I'm informed that the WIPORI had an agreement yesterday, or an agreement was reached yesterday, that at this time, that is 5 minutes before 5:30, members should be afforded a 10 minutes break because we need to finalize these questions today in this plenary. Are we still on that agreement? You need that break. Yes. Just for 10 minutes and then we come back again. I hope there's coffee.